you know, I always think about this: who gets invited, who gets to talk, who gets to, and this is kind of just repeating many of the things you did. You know, the privilege of English language, the privilege of academic language, the privilege of certain credentials, academic credentials. Getting into physical space, being able to listen in a certain way, her presentations of all of those things. So it also made me sad a little bit that it is kind of, you know, that it's such an exclusive space here. And I was very touched about, I didn't know this, about this music of the Pina Bausch piece, and I was very touched with how you dealt with that in the piece. I thought it was really beautiful, the way it was done, and the way it kind of the artist who sang the songs and Rita kind of took ownership of that. And I was also interested in these three kind of qualities you mentioned, I think care, solidarity, and accessibility. And how these are kind of, for you, it seemed like really like qualities that need to be present in actual anti-fascist work. That's how I understood. And at the same time, you know, working also as an activist, they are so rarely present, and also in cultural spaces, they are so rarely truly present. There is a lot of talk about care, there's a lot of talk about solidarity, there's also some talk about accessibility, but it's not really, it's not a reality. And I think the way you work, the way I know about your work in Novi Sad, it seems like a truly radical space where these things are possible, where this actual work can happen, but it's so rare. And so I also wanted to congratulate you for your 25th. It seems an incredibly long time, you know, also to be doing this work. Like in Switzerland, and I'm sure this is the same in a lot of spaces in Europe. 25 years ago, you know, disabled people were even less present in public spaces. There were even more obstacles to even get into spaces, to be in conversation. Also, I think this assumption that Dante made about Pina Bausch, that she thought that disabled people couldn't be artists, couldn't be dancers. I think he was probably very right.
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, and so again, this kind of, just thinking about the work we did 25 years ago, which was kind of also even before, I think, the second rendition with teenagers of Contactor. So it's very incredible that you conceived of this type of work that we think other people in like main cultural spaces couldn't conceive of, and a lot of them I think still cannot conceive of. I'm thinking of, I went to, I think 2 years ago, 1 year ago, one time, to the Deutsche Tanzpreis, because my friend and colleague Sophia Neises got a prize, and I was holding the laudatio. And there were 4 Pina Bausch dancers there who also got a prize, a bigger prize. And they were people who were closely with Pina Bausch. They were her close collaborators, and they were very confused about what Sophia and I were doing there. And and kind of what our relation to dance was. So this very much, I'm very much valuable there.
Thank you for saying this. I would just like to add this line that, how to say it? There is when you say that those dancers were confused, I think it is a moment for us and for them to also understand that the history of dance, of Tanztheater, to which they belong, and of dance, contemporary dance, is the history of eugenics and different forms of violence around it, and who then is excluded from that level to then not even question, like what is that Tanztheater or modern dance or contemporary dance. And that's what we strongly believe has to be questioned. And because of our history and our values that were formed, when I say our, I'm not saying for everyone, but it's for me and many of us, it is part of question of justice and anti-fascist struggle, which is opposite from the history to which Pina Bausch and Kontakthof belongs. Because it is unconceivable as an idea for someone who didn't survive but fascism as a form of upholding the capitalist imperialist system that is ableist system produced as society and then as art and culture and dance. It is inconceivable for someone who is on the other side of the history that you can propose a fascist composer to still be offered as an aesthetic ideal for us as public and dancers to identify with and to be part of that social choreography in which we reaffirm the status quo and we don't question at all. And that's why I think it is important to do so. And if our disabled colleagues are asking this question, I think it is something to, in my opinion, those positions we should all support, so that those positions, our disabled colleagues with these questions and with these positions can lead our society today. But we as artists, we can only try to do it through art, and we understand our roles as artists and citizens, but we strongly believe, and we prove, as you say, 25 years, we prove that it is possible. We create new social facts, and we believe that because we make it possible, in spite of all the impossibilities, how to say, we believe that if it's possible, and let's imagine that this is multiplied, we would be living in a different world. And that world, in my strong belief, is that it should be led and co-led by disabled people. And also those, but that's another topic, maybe not for now because of time and the situation, but also to problematize what happens and where is the place of those who are still not there because there are no material conditions for certain individuals to think of disability as a political identity. And those are many, but that's another maybe topic, but still for me it's part of this discussion.
Yes, I also was just thinking about another. Is this me? I'm I think it's been dealt with. I was also thinking of another experience we had at the Virtual Kunstpreis. There was some kind of big closing number with everyone, and then some of these Pina Bausch dancers just kind of grabbed Sophia and kind of, in a way of, I'm gonna help you to be part of this. So it just also made me really think of, which for a blind person is very scary, it's very uncomfortable, and we kind of worked very hard to get to this Deutsche Kunstpreis to have support structures where this wouldn't happen, or these things were less likely to happen. And so I think the conditions on which disabled people are allowed to participate, are able to participate, this is still a very big question to me. And so it also goes very much into what you're saying about co-leading or leading and actually taking measures of accessibility, of the possibility of participation as a baseline and not as something that is kind of an afterthought, as something, that non-disabled people can feel good about because they're adding this to what is already there, but to really conceive in a different way of what could be possible.
Exactly, that's where the question of justice comes in, because we, in our work, we strongly believe that accessibility, care and solidarity, they are not a theme. They are not part of the current cultural policy trends that define what is being short-term supported. And I'm saying this as someone who experienced what that means as a non-disabled artist, what that means 20-something years ago when the Eastern Europe was on the agenda. And that's what I'm trying also always to point out, that we must be aware that now when disability is on the agenda of cultural policies, we need to insist that this is not a theme, that this needs to be taught on a systemic level, and the changes can only happen if disabled artists and experts would be entering those positions where these decisions are being made. And that's why there is this difference. Like you cannot not think it's a question of theme if you are striving for justice. And that's like where I think the difference is. And I would just like to say, because you were mentioning Sophia Nices, Sophia Nices is in my work and in our work that then I also bring in different contexts, the way how Sophia also talks about aesthetics of access, I think is extremely important. Of course, many deaf and disabled and chronically ill artists do talk about the importance that accessibility is there from the very beginning of the idea of a certain initiative or artistic work and so on. But what Sophia expressed in one of the occasions, and I read it, is that also it should have as many manifestations as the art itself has, so that we understand that it is not something separate, that it is art. If we are making art, it can have as many as manifestations of what aesthetics of access mean, and what can emerge is as many as artistic practices and manifestations and forms that there can be. And I think what Sophia Nices points out, I think it's very important.
So maybe you can tell actually a little bit more about this, how you put an aesthetics of access into the piece that you showed. I think, for me, it was very visible in some ways, but maybe people who are listening don't really know, and I think it's always really good to show with an example.
Well, also the video is one example. I just realized also by watching the video documentation when Marko Bašica is singing Đelem Đelem, a Romani song that is also anti-fascist song. Because of the angle of the camera, he's covering the right side of the wall, and on the left side you could see subtitles, translation in English and in German of the Balkan Romani, but on the other side, which is covered by Marko's body, there was a video of Matt Scheffer, the deaf interpreter, who also interpreted the song in German Sign Language. And we treated it as language and also aesthetically, because the text and transcription is the transcription of a spoken language. And throughout the performance we had also interpretations that are done by Matt, and Oya Ataman is hearing the Oda interpreter who is feeding Matt during the interpretation, during the interpretation and performance. But in this moment, we wanted to also bring it in another medium to also point out that it is two languages, but also interpretation of the song is much more than what in spoken language the transcript means. So I just wanted to also add this because it was not visible in the documentation, and it is part of what you are asking me. And the other aspect maybe to mention is the care and accessibility that is really there from the very beginning of just talking about what does this mean, how are we going to do this. Of course, as a non-disabled artist and cultural worker, with all of my privileges to have access to means and resources, I then have a different task and responsibility to provide conditions for this to happen. But in this process, the care and accessibility that is present in the work, in the communication, and in the way how this creates the affective state from which we work, which is what I was mentioning earlier: the trust, the love, empathy, support, and the freedom that Dalibor talks about, because it is then the point to understand where the feeling of freedom comes from, because usually production models in dance, in contemporary dance, since they're fundamentally based on competition, they create alienation, isolation, fear, greed, etc., etc. But in the way how we believe the work is done, it is then a thought through solidarity, and then care and accessibility come in because we believe in justice.
I just wanted to add, so one other thing that I noticed was how, I think it was Diana and Angela were in beanbags. And just knowing, knowing Angela, I would imagine that this was kind of a measure of aesthetics of access as well, that people could be present on stage in ways that were comfortable to them and accessible to them.
Exactly, and this was also throughout the process. And I was thinking of the space also here today. What do we reaffirm over and over again as a way of being present? And what is the attendance that we are disciplined to? Because not only in the performance but also in the process, for me it was important to, because these also artists that we saw, most of them are artists that we have long-term collaborations, and this is like part of the whole history and the way of thinking of the work. But for example, Rita Mazza was the first time that I also dared to invite Rita after years of following their work, learning, communicating, thinking of what I need to provide and offer for this possibility to happen. But then in all this communication, it was important to consider access needs of everyone and to think of it is not like one model or one solution. And then this also was included from the very beginning in different phases and in different spaces that we worked before we all came together. And then also the studio in which we worked had also ways to support different way of being present, which is both vertical and horizontal, but also in movement, in absence also. Angela Alves, I think it's extremely important the way how Angela Alves in her practice thinks of unavailability and what it is its artistic potential, but I think also political potential to suggest changing really how we are expected to be in public, but also as social subjects, and also how we relate with each other. So this was also part of the whole way of thinking, what are the conditions that we provide for the aesthetics of access to emerge.
Sorry, I'm looking at you because I think before I ask this question, you were about to say something.
Well, I have unpleasant role of being the housekeeper and timekeeper, so I will have to maybe one short question more, and then we will have to move on. But we still can, in the breaks, and continue this beautiful conversation, which I'm very sad also to.
Or what we can do, you can pose a very long question, and I can have a short answer.
But also I thought maybe somebody here would have a question.
Actually, I might pose a very long question that you might have.
Perfect. Teamwork.
Yeah, first I wanted to just thanks a lot for your conversation and also for your presentation, Saša. I had a pleasure to see the performance live, and it was an extremely important experience for me, and also I was super happy to see it as an opening show of the Deutschland Tanz platform, as being like really like a big boom opening. So to give your artists, your work, and your thinking visibility in this context was super important, and really read it as a meaningful gesture. But when you are talking about Pina Bausch, I cannot stop thinking about her dramaturg, who has joined the company, I think, right after Gottberg Hof, Raimund Vogel, and for 10 years was accompanying all her also very famous performances. And Raimund was severely disabled and gay, born between wars, so also very much aware that he, if he wouldn't be lucky, could be a subject also of extermination. And I'm always questioning whether his quit from Tanztheater was also somehow driven. You can speculate on it because I never heard from him directly about it. But he actually left Pina Bausch to do the work and put himself in the center on stage with his body disfigured and with all the complexity of his artistry and identity. And we are now in the moment when still too little, but some these artists with disabilities are becoming visible and are gaining, let's say, recognition. Just let me mention at least Claire Cunningham, a first ever professor at the dance department of HZT Berlin, which is really already like another milestone, let's say. Or like there is a very beautiful artist, Chiara Bersani, an Italian one, that is also touring all over the world and also kind of thematize this problematics. And I was wondering whether you know, I'm not aware of, but whether you know about any kind of archiving or documentation processes that are actually not only trying to reenact canon of Western European modern contemporary dance with different bodies, but that would also record and archive the artistry of artists with disabilities. Is there any collection, any research project around this happening?
So what I can answer is that I'm currently part of a research project at HKW, where I'm actually interviewing disabled artists about the practices. Chiara Bersani is one of them. Saša and Dario are also one of them. So yes, and what kind of really struck me there is really how much knowledge there is, how much knowledge we have about different things, from aesthetics to working processes to dealing with cultural institutions, and how little record there is of this, and how there needs to be more, how also we need to be in conversation with each other, because I interviewed disabled artists from Japan and disabled artists from Brazil, and it struck me then how similar some of the themes they're dealing with are to, for example, what you and Dalibor are talking about, and also the differences. Other than that, I think there are some, like there is a really good resource from the UK that's called Disability Arts Online that has really a lot of information there. I also know that in Germany at the moment they're building some kind of performance archive, but there again it kind of struck them halfway through creating this that they have very little on disability, on BIPOC artists that they're now to readdress. So again, I think whenever we're thinking or trying to create these platforms, it's really difficult to not kind of generate similar exclusions again. Also during the research project, one of the things I really kind of came against was the ability of speaking English and how to deal with that. So I think we still have a really long way to go, but maybe, do you have an archive of the last 25 years of the work you did?
We don't have it public, and we don't have it available because of the lack of means, but also capacity to also take good care of that in a more systematic way. But it is something that we are thinking how to dedicate time to take care of this also in the next phase. A little bit there is on what we could do on like a Facebook page of the group, where we also post and document in short videos how our disabled colleagues reflect on their work, on processes, on their thoughts about the world and context in which we work. So there is this, and also on this project .info is also a website that I created where I try to bring together different works where there are many different disabled and deaf artists with through interviews and different documentation that is also there. Yeah. But I agree with you. What you said, that even with the attempts, when initiatives are being started, those who make decisions still impose limitations in how to think of archive and how to document.
Yes, and I also think, just from what you said, archiving takes, if you're struggling to survive, also to survive as a company, to survive as an artist, archiving is just not the priority.
But can I, sorry, I know it's a time, but I think this is an encounter, and I guess we will follow people who are here. We will also come to their, because what you just said, and I think it is also important to think that archiving is a form of control, and also to understand it. I think Boris Groys writes about this, the biopolitical aspect of it. I would need to now remember or look into it again, but I think there is something to think about, critically about this, and especially for those who are historically oppressed and excluded from any form of documenting. Or they are only documented by those who performed violence on them. And this, I think, the moment in art where the documentation and archiving is entering as a big request, I think that is also the moment to think biopolitically, what does this mean for those who are historically excluded, and not to just also take it as a request in order to be maybe given a little bit of financial and material means to kind of do something that structurally will not change anything.
Yeah, I think I thank you for saying that, because I also have very often a feeling that certain careers of those very few artists with disabilities are actually a syndrome of tokenizing, you know, and almost like paying a tax from a good conscience of those who are indeed oppressive and excluding 99% of the time.
Oh, I think this is a good point to make this mood transition. I mean, this is a, you know, but let us engage more in discussions among ourselves. And now I'm very happy to announce Rebecca Gordon and Stella Bain, who will give a sort of expanding this idea with this notion of slowness as a moment of care.
And it's a wonderful transition. I just want to ask you all to join me in thanking Saša Asentić and Mühlemann.